Mm.
Okay, welcome to this talk about hacking your own devices by Kim Højgaard.
Thanks. Hi everybody. So this is a talk that's a little bit with two rather a bit separate but also very much combined topics. So first of all, it's a illustration of how a project that I'm involved with called OE Lite can be used for our kind of people's purposes of actually producing fully working software stacks for embedded devices. And then it's also like an example project that I'm using it for myself, trying to demonstrate to you guys that it's actually somewhat usable. And the project is like a completely idealistic, crazy thing that it should be possible to just completely take over the control of some of the stuff that's running in your house. And in my case, I have been annoyed for years about crappy vendor routers and weird restrictions on software and having to throw out perfectly good working hardware and stuff like that. So I've taken on the task of actually trying to build something that I can maintain and that I'm in full control of. And it should also be at a reasonable price. So I found this crazy named Banana Pi R1. It's some Chinese crazy people that did this board. But the nice thing about it is that you have a complete Ethernet switch, a capable CPU, and lots of other interesting stuff, and some wireless LAN. Need to put on separate external antennas. And it's pretty much like open hardware in the sense that you can figure out exactly what it's built from, and you can create software for it. So I'll try to take you through that. So just a little bit about myself. I mean, I've been working at a company where we do embedded Linux development for around 3 years now. This is custom systems for all kinds of weird products, from medical devices to actually computers running inside train toilets. Really a wide range. And to do this, we have to basically be able to completely customize the Linux operating system and user space utilities to work in those settings. Before that, I've been involved in Linux for around 9 years now. I mean, mainly in a interesting Linux distribution that's kind of a spin-off of Gentoo, where we build everything from scratch, also from source code directly. I'm a maintainer in this open source project that I'm trying to tell you about. And I also have a background in academia as a PhD doing wireless network performance optimizations. Yeah. So what's this about? Why am I where am I going with this? I mean, as I said initially, typical household today, we already see like a lot of different electronic devices. I mean, typically those are like what I would call vendor locked down devices of some kind, where you buy a completely finished product and you can expect maybe for some time to have software updates or maybe a couple of new features, but generally you are completely in the hands of whoever did the device. Well, it also means that you typically get it at a very reasonable price, at least depending on how you see it. I mean, you can get cheap routers, you can get cheap network attached servers and all these kinds of things. But I mean, at least in my own experience, I've often felt frustrated with some of the stuff that you can buy, and been wondering if there was some way that I could change this aspect, that I actually would like to be the one that decides what to do with my device, and if I can modify, especially the security part of it is what annoys me, and being able to restrict it and actually update critical parts of it. I mean, you would often see that even though you might get software updates for these kind of vendor devices, they maybe not really updating it in a relevant manner, so you're still running like a very old PC box or Linux kernel that is completely filled with flaws, even though they say that they are updating stuff. So I've been wondering if we could change that. I mean, there are, I should say, of course, a lot of other possibilities of not going into this completely crazy direction of building the whole thing yourself. I mean, you have lots of the Linksys device shown here is a perfect example of where it all started with tinkering with routers. And the OpenVRT project is a great project. I mean, you can run it on lots of devices, so there's much easier ways to go around with this. But in my case, I actually want to be not limited by whatever choices someone else made. Yeah, it's a little bit the same here. I mean, typically, you see, I mean, I've seen at least very, very shitty software quality. It's also often filled with features I don't need. I mean, I don't want to hook up a printer for my router, but maybe someone will, but maybe I don't. And maybe I don't want to deal with all the stuff that is added on top of the device to handle these cases. But I generally also have ways of using these devices that the manufacturer maybe didn't think of. So maybe it's possible to change. Yeah, I think it's appropriate to be honest with stuff like this. I mean, there's lots of reason not to do this, and I mean, I've already been working on this project for a while. Let's just say, if you combine the spare time I've been using on it, maybe it's taking me 2-3 weeks, all in all, to reach a state where I still don't really have a fully functional home router, but it's actually starting to be something that can be used. It's lots of work. Michael, you ruined it. It sometimes at least requires some deep knowledge of Linux, embedded Linux maybe even, to get stuff working. But I mean, there's so many helpful documentation, so much helpful advice all around the place, and it depends a lot on the kind of project that you are going to do. But in this particular case, basically, to get started at least, or to get something working, it wouldn't really require specific low-level Linux knowledge. To actually get it to a point where it's very maintainable software-wise, it does require that. And of course, now it's mainly, at least you, who will have to do basically all the work, at least initially. At some point, you would be able to take updates from basically some of the upstream projects. The whole point from my side is also to get the software on a board like this to a point where I can actually continuously take in new Linux kernels, new bootloaders, new whatever I want. So, and in the easiest way possible. So, a picture of the board here. I don't know how much you can see of it. It is a relatively cheap way to get the hardware you need to make a router, I would say. When I bought it, it was something like 350 Danish kroners. Unfortunately, I hit customs, so it became more expensive. But if you can somehow manage to avoid that, it's not expensive. At least not to compare to some of the earlier projects I have been trying to use to solve the similar tasks. I mean, there are various really cool boards that has multiple Ethernets, and if you can just throw a big normal computer at it, maybe that's easier. I mean, my earlier experimentations has been revolved around using OpenBSD, and because they have a really nice firewall implementation, but it brought its own kind of problems. I don't really feel it's that easy to maintain it. I mean, upgrade-wise, you're not really sure that everything is still working every time, and you end up basically doing a little bit of the same that I mentioned is a problem. So you've basically stopped updating some parts of it and to avoid stuff breaking down. And I really never had much success with the wireless LAN part of it. That might just be due to my knowledge of it. the board is a little bit funny. It does more, I would say, than just being a router. There's a SATA port, so you can plug in a normal hard drive. I don't think it will boot off it, but that's not really a big deal. You could easily put most of your software on the SATA device as well, and then just have the bootloader on the micro SD card that is in here. It also has an wow. It also has an HDMI connector, so it's a little bit of, I think they are a little bit confused if they actually want to make a media center, or I don't know. But it also just makes it possible to do more stuff. You don't really have to use all these hardware features. It's very easy to work with. You have a serial console hooked up to 3 pins directly on the board, and you just buy one of these cheap $2 FTDI cables or clones from China. And then you can talk to both the bootloader and the kernel directly. The CPU is called an Allwinner A20. It's one of the trillion different ARM cores you can find out there. It's like pretty decent, I would say, performance-wise. You have a dual core 1 GHz and 1 GB of RAM on this board. It should be plenty to run a proper router with. So my goal would be to replace my current some vendor-based home router with this. So what would it need to do? Well, it would have to have some wireless LAN capability, and there's some Realtek wireless LAN already on here, which should be usable. I would have to, for it to make sense for me and for all this work to make any kind of sense, the idea would be that the software becomes completely maintainable, meaning that I am in full control of what is going on. I'm not dependent on some weird setup outside my house where some distribution decides that this is no longer needed, or so they remove the software, or some upstream software dependency of some kind. And I want to not be stuck with weird proprietary software that you cannot update. I think the only part here that is still stuck somehow is probably the firmware on the wireless LAN that it's a bit hard to get rid of. Then there's a design decision from my side. I actually want the build of the software to have the configuration of the device completely hard-coded. I want to be able to always produce the working software from scratch, which means that if the SD card decides to die, I just build the software again and it's fully working, and it's built into my version control system how everything is configured. And this is actually possible with this OE Lite project. So to have a somewhat working router system, in this case I would need a bootloader. The guys doing the chips, I think they're called Sun XI, are pretty good at upstreaming driver support for their chips. So you have proper support in a tool like U-Boot. So it's pretty much a default choice in the ARM world. It's rather straightforward to work with. It's pretty much the same as building the Linux kernel. You have like a kconfig based configuration system, and you need to know how to configure it for a given board, but that's typically supplied from either the one creating the board or directly in the U-Boot source code. And in this case, it turned out that someone already did all the work in the U-Boot. So I can use a vanilla U-Boot for this. I'm going to need some kind of operating system. I mean, it's a limitation of the OE Lite project that it doesn't really build anything else than Linux. But that's also, the reason for that is pure and simple. The flexibility in the Linux ecosystem is completely resolved around the idea that you combine all these components completely how you want to. It's also a challenge because you have to figure out how to do it. But it allows you to completely tailor the system to your needs. So I'm going to need the Linux kernel, some libc, some init, something to boot the system. You could think of it as like a completely minimal Linux distribution of some kind. And then I'm going to need something to be able to provide router functionality. So at least in my case, I want to be able to SSH to it. and I wanted to be able to do firewall functionality and hand out IPs and stuff like that on my local network. So now there's maybe different ways you could approach this, and there are many different levels of idealistic scenarios in how to deal with this. I've chosen to only try to kind of perspective it to the most used probably way that people would try to achieve the same thing like this. I mean, it's something that we hear a lot in my daily work. I mean, also our typical customers will ask, well, why isn't it just good enough to just run Ubuntu on it? I mean, it's working, right? So we can just use that. And it's sure. I mean, Ubuntu runs on a lot of things now. They have active maintainers of various ARM ports and all that stuff. But there are actually reasons why that might not be preferable, at least in this case. First of all, typically on these kinds of boards, unless some Ubuntu developer already decided to completely support your board, meaning with a kernel and a U-boot or bootloader of some kind that actually works for this board, well, you're going to need to have a custom version, at least seen from a Ubuntu perspective. It's possible, but it's a bit difficult and tricky to do it in. Ubuntu is not really designed to be forked in the sense that the user basically makes serious modifications. So it's not supposed to be that you run all kinds of custom stuff. And there's also the aspect of it that I want to decide when and how exactly to update the software. This is, I would say, really hard in Ubuntu. You could probably achieve it by having your own repositories with Debian packages and try to basically take over the maintenance of the Ubuntu software stack, but it's probably also defeating completely the purpose of running Ubuntu, because then why are you even, I mean, then you're not really benefiting from it anymore if you just have to do it all yourself. So I know by experience that you want to be able to easily modify some parts of the upstream software. Now, it could be that you want to run the latest development version because there's some feature or there's some bug that was solved in there. You definitely want to be able to patch it, and you definitely want to not rely on that it's the upstream distribution that does this for you. And in my case, I also want to be able to disable everything I don't want, basically. I want to tailor it to just do what it's supposed to. And this is next to impossible, basically, because the whole point of a generic distribution like Ubuntu is to make it as easy as possible to get something running, and it shouldn't involve all these kinds of decisions on what to include and what to not include. So, again, you might be able to achieve it, but it's really hard. Then there's probably the most important aspect of it. I want to be able to always, no matter how long from now I'm going to rebuild my SD card, I want to be able to do that from scratch without depending on something outside my own computer, basically. Now this is extremely hard with a normal distribution, because it's set up to be easy. It's set up so that you should do as little as possible, and it means that you end up relying on various software and services basically being provided from the distribution. Now I put in a disclaimer here. Yes, I'm really biased because I work with this stuff daily, but it also means that I have seen this kind of things fail really hard in practice, and I've seen companies and individuals trying to do stuff like this with the normal distributions, and really it hits them rather hard in a very unfortunate period of their development phases typically. And I just wanted to start somewhere else. So one way, at least, of actually fulfilling the stuff that I have set up as a requirement to do this is this build framework, you can call it. It's called OE Lite. It's like a rather crappy name, actually, but that stems from the time that it was created, where initially it was a try to do some technical improvements of the Open Embedded project. That turned out to require everybody in the whole world to change basically their recipes, their build recipes, if they wanted to take in this technical change. And Open Embedded people, they were not interested in enforcing some kind of change like that on all their users. So it ended up as a initially at least, as a stripped down version of Open Embedded with these technical improvements inside of it. I'll come back to those technical improvements. And that, I think, from a lazy perspective, ended up with the name Light OE. But it's not really light in that sense. It's more like it's a version of Open Embedded where there's a more strict focus on certain aspects and where certain features have been taken away. So some of the design goals of the OE Lite project is to basically try to minimize the number of surprises you get from trying to build everything from scratch. It has to be possible to customize every aspect of your system. This is simply to be able to facilitate all the different kinds of products that you want to do with these kind of build frameworks. This is the number 2 bullet. Full customization is also something that you see in big projects like the Yocto project, and Open Embedded. Open Embedded is also still a project in itself, and it's the same. They also have that. Now, in contrast to Yocto and Open Embedded, OE Lite tries to not include, to only include the things that are really strictly needed, and try to avoid to make it too complicated whenever possible, because it's complicated enough already, actually. And then it's not just a goal, but it's like also a technical requirement inside the build framework that everything has to be reproducible, not in the Debian reproducible build sense where you have like binary, you can compare 2 binary editions from different build hosts, but more in the sense that when you run your build, you need to be pretty sure. You need to be sure what is the output, basically. So you don't risk picking up some weird corner case of a build system and then including something else. An interesting aspect of this is that all configuration can be baked into the building process. Don't see you have to. But instead of actually runtime configuring your device, you can actually add all of this configuration, the build recipes, the stuff that you need to actually build the software. They are constructed in a manner such that you can actually configure them at build time to include all the configuration needed when the system is deployed. And this has the interesting aspect that you actually put your configuration into a version control system. So you also have complete control of your configuration yourself, and it's backed up. Typical OE Lite build produces like a set of complete file system images, so it could be a boot file system and then a root file system to actually run the device. And those are typically a tarball of some kind with all the needed files in it, and then you can rather easily create a small script or something to flash those to your whatever choice of storage device you have. I mean, in the cheap end of all these devices, that would be an SD card. So how does that work? Well, from a very high-level perspective, you have a set of generic build recipes used to basically take the software that is in the whole Linux ecosystem, download it and configure it and build it and install it. And these build recipes are split into various topic repositories because you don't typically need all of them all the time. There's like there's the core set of recipes that are dealing with building a tool chain that works for your target device. And there's a base layer where all the normally used software would live, like init systems and core libraries of some kind, libcs and stuff like that. And then there's various other layers that you can bring in if you need them. So like for multimedia, if you want to run graphical stuff like Qt, or it could be that you want to include Python on the device also, maybe, for example. So there's various categories, and I'll show them in a bit. Then, besides the generic recipes, there's a set of files and a hierarchy of configuration files, basically, that is configuring how this build should happen. And it's split into 3 main categories. One that deals with the actual hardware that you're trying to build for. So we call it a machine configuration, and that would typically set up properties that are directly related to a specific device. So if you need a specific kernel for this device, if you need to tweak some kind of initialization on this device and stuff like that. And then there's something that I dislike the naming of this, but you should think of it, a distro configuration is more like whatever is not hardware specific but could be used on any device. But you still, for example, you still want to say where your NTP server lives, stuff like that. And then there's like local configuration stuff that is not something like running on this build machine. I have 10 CPUs, so I can tweak how many builds I do in parallel. That's more like at build time configuration. Then there's a tool written in Python that's basically coming back all the way to Gentoo. That's also have the emerge, the portage tool called emerge, the command line at least. It has this heritage, but it's really not the same anymore. But it's a Python-based tool that you basically use to build. It will read and parse all these recipes, and it will carry out the different tasks involved with building the software. Out of that process comes one or more images that you can actually put on your device. So from a user perspective, when you have created some of these, when the recipes are there and your configuration is there, then it's pretty easy to use it, at least. There is unfortunately still some dependencies on tools from the host machine used to do the build. You basically have to have a tool chain to start it all up with, to bootstrap the build. The first thing that happens in OLite is that you build a tool chain across compiler that can target whatever device that you're developing for. Yeah. So what is a machine? I hope you can see this reasonably at least. What is definitely in a machine configuration is some kind of information about the target architecture. So in this case, it's an ARM Cortex-A8. That's the general architecture of also for the Allwinner chips. There's some information related to the API that you are using, and then there's various of configuration settings here determining basically how the build should, in detail, what is specific for this machine. Usually that would be at least something like what kernel configuration or device. In this case, we point to a specific device tree. It's basically informing the Linux kernel what hardware we are putting on. That's how you set up stuff in the ARM world. And then various settings about memory and what your maybe if there's a specific configuration of your network devices, and here's some in the lower parts you have some stuff about the serial console that is being spawned when you boot the board. So the machine configuration deals only with basically stuff that really is specific to that hardware. And the nice thing about this is that when you have a configuration for different machines, you can actually build the whole set of the same software but targeted to another set of hardware, because it's described in a separate configuration. Then there's the distribution configuration. This is the high-level stuff, more like it deals with what parts of these build recipes should be included and how should they be configured. I mean, you can go down to the level of actually only including, only configuring them to do specific stuff. And here, for example, we in this distribution file configuration file I made for this board, I'm basically including all of BusyBox because I don't want to deal with that right now. So I'm saying, give me everything from BusyBox. And then there's various settings for how that should be done. There's like the root password is baked in here, even, so I should remember to change that at some point probably. Host name and various settings. It could be many different things here depending on the software that you end up including on your system. So then there's the build targeted. You could say the top level configuration is like a configuration file where you say, I have this board, the machine is a Banana Pi R1, and the distribution I want to run on that. So the not hardware specific configuration is this configuration file. Then OLite also allows you to build a software development kit that is, in this case, cross toolchain that is completely set up to run on your host machine, the one that you specify here. In this case, 32-bit Linux. The binaries will run on that, but it will target. So if you produce anything with that toolchain, it will target the device. And if you use OLite to generate such an SDK, it will have the exact matching libraries and everything that matches what is running on the root file system here. So you can use it to do local development of new features. And then some settings basically for how to do the build. In this case, I mean, how many CPUs do I have, or cores do I have to actually do the build. And you can also have like temporary overrides of configuration parameters in this file as well. Everything, I mean, the whole build is focused around what is called recipes. So a recipe is something that the OLite tool will read, and then it will do a set of steps to execute what is being told in these recipes. Here I have shown the kernel recipe, the Linux kernel build recipe for this router board. There are some metadata variables just to say what it's about and where it's located. There are various nice things in the OLite project where you can make recipes able to be configured for specific devices or exhibit certain behavior depending on what they're being built for. In this case, I have chosen to say that this recipe will never be considered by the tool if it's not this machine, because it's pretty hard-coded, the recipe, to actually only work with this machine. Then it points to the GitHub repository where the kernel source for this board lives, and what configuration the kernel should be built with. That's basically it. And many of the recipes will look like this. They're pretty simple. Not much coding is involved in actually creating recipes. And in the nice version of it, you shouldn't really need to do a lot of that yourself. At least not for the software that is already where a recipe has already been created for you. So there's configuration and build recipes and a tool. And so how do you then actually build it? Well, it's been decided a long time ago that it should be relatively straightforward to figure out what to build. And for this reason, there's a general principle in the OLite project that you create a top-level recipe called machine that is actually dealing with pulling in all the necessary dependencies for building whatever you want for your device. So in the nice setting, you have some kind of minimal build host configuration. This is described in the project. I use Docker for it because it's really easy to spawn a thin virtualized machine with the right tools in it. And then you just run OE bake machine, and it will chew on this for a while, depending a lot on what software you include. Stuff like building Qt or browsers or something like that takes a while. But in this case, where I actually have bootloader, kernel, and various dependencies needed to bring me up to a command prompt for this device, it takes around 24 minutes all in all to build the toolchain, cross-compile the toolchain, and build all the stuff needed to actually have a bootable system here. This is on a modern desktop machine, but still it's really not bad. Each of these recipes that are being built, they are built in a separate. This actually goes back to the technical advantages of this OLite project compared to some of the alternatives like Yocto. In OLite, each single recipe that's being built is being built in a separate sysroot, meaning that you create a directory layout somewhere on your file system in some kind of temporary directory layout where all the dependencies needed to actually build this recipe, they are staged in there. And then that minimizes very much the risk that you're picking up some weird stuff that will influence your build. So you're very sure that now you're actually building exactly what you want, and that you're not including stuff that you don't want. And whenever these different recipes have been built, the binary output of these ends up somewhere that it can be repackaged into a file system, a tarball of some kind. For each of the recipes, the general case, and this is designed around that. This is basically just how you normally would build a software project. In at least these set of steps, they can pretty much be converted to work with all kind of software that you can find around the whole open source ecosystem. They are quite centered around the AutoTools build system, because that is where you typically have the nicest implementation for cross compiling. But it can work for basically anything. So you fetch some source code typically. That you have a description of where to fetch it and check that it's actually the right source code that you're getting. You unpack it. You may be doing some patches. At least that happens sometimes due to cross compiling or various other issues. You configure the software with the features that you want, and then it builds the software and installs it into a directory that would, so where the layout inside that directory would resemble if you just install it on any kind of Linux machine. And then in OELite it's repackaged into it's split into different component packages. So you have documentation in a separate package. You have the utilities are typically split out into separate packages, so you can include whatever you want. So binaries, you maybe only want some of them. Libraries are split up, and then all these packages are put together, copied back into like a shared place where these file system tarballs can be generated from. So, let's see. I think we have time for this. It's not a big deal. Just wanted to briefly show you where the project lives. It's not anything big and shiny, but let's take a look. Why is it like this? Yeah. So the homepage is just GitHub page, and there's a link to the GitHub project here. It's currently not that great, room for improvement, but we're working actively on improving this all the time. So this is basically the place that you expect new users to hit, and there's going to very soon be some getting started guides here. The GitHub project contains these different layers of build recipes that I talked about. So you have core recipes, base. There's the web page. There's some. We are running a continuous integration on these things. So when people push new features to the project, we're basically trying to build it for a reasonable set of different target devices and checking that it still works. There's XOR, Qt, Python, some Mono stuff, Freescale stuff. Yeah, lots of different things. Some documentation, repositories, and various other things. Just quickly showing one of these. Let's see if we can increase this a bit. Yeah. So a typical repository with recipes would have a layout similar to this. You have recipes. You have some configuration that might be specific to this this category of recipes, and then you have generic. So there's a level above recipes where multiple recipes could use the same kind of functionality. So in order to not duplicate this all around, you have classes. This is also found in various other source-based distribution, this concept. So you basically have something to deal with AutoTools build system, for example. So you don't have to do it all over in the recipes. And then in the recipe directory, you have all the stuff that you can actually include on your device. Like here's the Blues, Boost, C++ stuff, and DHCP, blah blah. There's a lot of various recipes here. You will not find that much, like there are various things that you will not really find in OELite. For instance, full desktop environment like KDE. It doesn't make much sense on embedded devices typically, so nobody did that yet. But the basic stuff, the stuff that you need to have a working command line based system, is definitely here, and you will also be able to do some graphical stuff with the Qt layer and whatever you can think of. And let's just take a brief look. Here's some LibreSSL recipe, for instance. So it's a little bit longer, a little bit more complicated recipe, but that's because it deals with actually trying to split out the different parts of LibreSSL into whatever you might want to include. And there's also something here that deals with if you're building it for Windows and stuff like that. So just to briefly show you what's up there. Yeah, then there's connected to, that's like the easiest way in a GitHub project setting to actually be able to talk easily to each other is through some of these other third-party services. We use this called Gitter.im. It's basically just web-based chat. We used to use IRC, but at least for certain people it's like very inconvenient to be able to connect to that. It's much easier with the web-based thing, and it has, you can browse back to whatever people said, and there are various different channels and all these nice properties. So you can hop in and discuss this with us if you want to. That was not it. So, back to the router. I have now a top level. You can call it. We call it a manifest repository because it's like a repository that configures the OELite projects in a specific way that matches some kind of useful, some kind of end product. And so in my case, I've created a project on GitHub called OELite Banana Pie because it's the board. And there's a repository, you can clone it, git clone it, and it contains all that is needed to make this build actually run and produce a bootable system that is just put on the SD card with a small script. Currently, it's using completely vanilla upstream U-boot from now it's written 2.15. I'm pretty sure I updated. I think that's actually wrong here. It's more recent than that. I have some 2016 version of U-boot running on it already, and that's very much on purpose. I started with the bootloader, and I want to use pure upstream software, such that I'm not hooked into some weird branch where I have to maintain the Linux kernel branch myself or something weird like that. And it's not looking like it's completely impossible in this case. I started out with the kernel from the Banana Pie people. That's some really crappy code dump that they just put on GitHub at some point, and you can't even really use it to compare it directly to the mainline kernel because they decided in some infinite wisdom to add both the U-boot and the kernel code into the same Git repository and then completely drop all history from that. So you can't really see how it was done. You could copy it into a Linux Git repository and then see what they actually did. But what is actually the case is that the Allwinner guys, the guys doing the chip, they are very active in upstreaming their stuff to Linux. So next step is to actually try to bring in a vanilla Linux kernel on this board. It's going to be a bit interesting with the wireless LAN especially, but I think it can be. My current research shows me that this should be doable. If not, I might have to resort to some kind of USB-based wireless LAN. Then I need to actually make it a router with some of the user space utilities. This is pretty straightforward because I know we have all the stuff that is needed to run an access point and DHCP server and whatever in OELite already. So that's basically just in writing that I want DHCP in my file system. Then I have to make it possible to fork the runtime configuration easily, such that you could, as another user, maybe you could clone my repository, then you could add a few configuration settings, and then you have your own router with that. And at that point, I think then it could be opened up for other people to play around with. I would advertise it on the Banana Pie wiki and stuff like that. Sometime in the far future, I think I would like to add some web UI, maybe, but I currently actually really like the idea that I do not create runtime configuration on the device, but I bake it into the build because then I can always recreate it. But it's a little bit of a trade-off. It's quite annoying that you have to do a build to open up a TCP port. So I don't know. Maybe it's stretching it. That's where it is right now. One of my friends did a 3D print from some schematics already provided by some of the community guys around the project. So I have a complete casing here that fits the board, spacing for all the ports and stuff. It's a little bit rough, but it actually I have had it in there. It works. So some nice possibilities. Whoops. Yeah. That's it. I mean, I'm trying to basically illustrate that this somewhat idealistic way of thinking of your own devices is probably possible with a significant amount of work, but I mean, for most of our guys, it's probably fun anyway. So I'm going to go a little bit back to the why here, because I think this is always useful to talk about. I mean, there are trade-offs, right? So I'm trading off the easy way of just using a vendor router and not caring too much about it, with like probably a significant amount of work, but at least I choose when to do it. And is it worth it? Well, I don't think I have used more time on this than yeah, I think it's actually worth it, because now I'm reaching a point where I can do exactly what I want with my router. And I have the huge advantage that I am not in any way dependent on anything external wise, so I can rebuild it from scratch at whatever time I choose. One of the huge benefits of hooking it into a build framework that is a little bit complicated is actually that at some time in the future, I might find a more interesting ARM board or whatever other weird architecture I could think of that might be a better fit for a router or might work better. Let's say that the wireless LAN is going to give me a headache here. I might end up finding a separate piece of hardware. Now, it would be really annoying if I had to start from scratch again, but since I actually used this tool OELite for this, and I described the machine as a separate thing here, all the stuff that I did to the recipes, it's just completely portable into another machine. So if I just create another machine configuration for a separate board, I can use the same software. So I don't have to redo the whole thing if I decide to change the hardware. This is one of the really cool side effects of having it hooked up like this. Yeah. Maybe I'm not ever going to do anything weird with it, so because I ran out of time, but I can do that. It's possible. That's it from my side. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions. No.
No questions?
All right then.